Hello my friends and welcome once again to this Red Gaming Tech video with myself, Amata. I'm here as always with the latest news from the tech and gaming world from the last 24 or so hours as of the 20th of August. We've got quite a bit to get stuck into today and we're going to start things off with rumours of a Prince of Persia remake. So I just want to say straight off the bat that thank you very much to the user on Discord who sent me this, MMilf, and also to the guys over at GameDebate.com who originally reported on it. But essentially what we have here is a leak of a Prince of Persia remake for the PlayStation 4 and Nintendo Switch. And according to Game Debate's article, this was leaked by an online retailer, but obviously has now been taken down, but not before screenshots were taken and the damage was done. Now, of course, Ubisoft are expected to hold an event in September where we will most likely see this revealed, assuming this is legitimate. Now, I will say, I actually loved the Prince of Persia trilogy on the PS2. I wasn't overly keen on the more modern one they did. I think it was on the Xbox 360, if I remember correctly, or that's the platform I played it on at least anyway. I wasn't overly keen on that, but the original trilogy was great. I played that way too much back in the day, so I would be interested in more Prince of Persia, but I'm just kind of concerned because, yeah, it's just always worrying when an old favourite series returns with like a remake at the end of it. It's like, are you actually going to make a new Prince of Persia game, or are you just going to make a game that isn't actually Prince of Persia but has Prince of Persia in the title? We'll have to wait and see, of course, and there is very much the possibility that this is not true, so do, of course, keep that in mind. Before we get into the meat of today's video, I just want to quickly update you all with some comments from 343 Industries regarding the Halo Infinite delay. Now, I mentioned in my video yesterday that there was a report doing the rounds that one of the reasons behind the delay for the title until 2021 was the management over at 343 being distracted by the TV show which is currently in production. But 343 has refuted this particular claim in a statement shared with IGN yesterday. And of course you can find IGN's article linked in the description below this video. However, 343 said, quote, 343 Industries has a devoted transmedia team that is working with Showtime on the creation and production of the Halo TV show. This group is separate from the Halo Infinite development team. These are two completely independent projects with dedicated teams and leadership that do not impact one another. Now, you may remember from my video yesterday that the reports weren't just saying that it was due to the TV show. They also said that a heavy amount of outsourcing, an unusual amount of outsourcing, even for a AAA game, was also behind the delay. But sadly, 343 didn't even slightly touch on this, even a little bit. They just addressed the TV show claims. But I wanted to update you guys. So let's get into our main meat of the video, shall we? And our first piece of meat is from AMD regarding Arcturus. So we have Komachi to thank this time around for sharing this on Twitter. It was originally tweeted by the RRA bots. Now this is a Twitter account you should be pretty familiar with by this point because it just literally tweets out all the new RRA listings. And what we can see from Rogame's tweet, it is the MI100, which is better known as Arcturus. Now you might wonder what an RRA listing actually means. Basically it means that the cards are on the final stages of launch. So we will see official word regarding Arcturus quite soon. And we actually have something else for AMD today regarding Navi 22. This time around thanks to Komachi. And as you can see, the tweet looks like just a bunch of letters, but it says AMD VB Flash 4.7.1, 8x 2021, and support Navi 22 ASIC. So essentially, the English translation of that is that we are seeing Navi 22 BIOS support being added as well. And following on from that, sticking with the Navi 22 theme, there is also a tweet from Moore's Law is Dead, and of course you can find his tweet and all the other tweets I've mentioned linked below, which reads, quote, Navi 22 has moved on to the main branch of driver development. It may actually manage to launch this year right after Biggest Navi, or Navi 21. Now, of course, if it does actually manage to launch this year, that obviously would be a great thing for AMD. And someone also helpfully responded to Moore's Law is Dead's tweet, basically saying that on Linux there are two GPUs, Sienna Kiklet and Navi Flounder for now, and I do believe we have covered this in the past, some time ago now. So it does actually make perfect sense. Obviously, we'll have to wait and see what AMD have in store for us. Of course, Nvidia have their reveal event coming up in just a couple of weeks, so we are going to be seeing what they've been planning quite soon, and I would imagine that AMD will be keen to follow up with a response shortly after. And it seems the RRA Fairy was not just visiting AMD today. So basically what we have this time around is the RRA Fairy has actually potentially visited Nvidia as well. Now, I will say that no direct cards are actually mentioned in this certification, but you will see a model name, PGA133A. And if you folks have actually been following Kapiti7 Kimi over on Twitter, and I'd recommend it because they are very accurate when it comes to Nvidia information, this particular board number has been mentioned as the board designed for the upcoming GA102 GPU graphics cards. And essentially we can safely assume and speculate, but of course we should always take it with the patented pinch of salt, it is most likely going to be the board for the 3090 on the 3080 Founders Edition. Now again, this is very, very big news because it means that this is like the last step before launch, as I've just said, for the AMD cards. And obviously this lines up with the fact that Nvidia have their event coming up in a couple of weeks, as I just mentioned, so it all kind of makes sense and comes together to all form a coherent picture. Obviously Nvidia hasn't really said what exactly they're going to be talking about at this event, but it's obviously going to be RTX 30 or Ampere, whatever you want to call it, and we most likely will be seeing this board being featured on the 3890 or 3080. Now, I think all of us are really, really looking forward to the event from Nvidia. I'm looking forward to finally knowing what these cards actually have up their sleeves. Spec-wise, we've seen some pretty wild numbers coming out the last few weeks, both in terms of prices and specification. So it's also going to be great to know exactly what we're dealing with here, and of course exactly what sort of cards AMD are going to have to respond to. But with all that said, we're going to move on now to some PlayStation news, as the first global ad spot for the console has surfaced. Now, I will say this was first initially leaked. Someone did helpfully share it on our Discord, and if you are interested in joining, by the way, you'll find a link in the description below. But it was then shortly after shared officially on the PlayStation blog, so hooray, no salt required for this one. Now, the ad spot doesn't really tell us anything about the console. It's obviously just an ad and doesn't even show any gameplay or anything like that. But obviously this hints that announcements are probably coming very, very soon, now that Sony are kicking into high gear when it comes to the marketing of this console. We can expect, price, release date, etc. to follow fairly shortly. Now, I will link the PlayStation blog in the description below this video because it is actually worth a read, because it comes with some very interesting comments from several developers of key PlayStation 5 exclusives like Horizon Zero Dawn, Forbidden West, Demon Souls even, Deathloop. And the Deathloop comments are actually really interesting because they talk about how they've actually made use of the DualSense controller triggers. So this was from the game director Dinga Bakaba, hopefully I pronounced that correctly, and they were talking about what happens when your weapon jams in game. And they actually said, quote, "I'm really excited by the adaptive triggers and the haptic feedback. Both features will bring some physicality in game experiences and give important feedback. Deathloop being a first-person shooter, we do a lot of things to make weapons feel differently from one another. One I like is blocking the triggers when your weapon jams to give the player an immediate feedback even before the animation plays out, which prompts the player in a physical way that they have to unjam their gun." Now, obviously, that's only a small thing, but it's all these little touches that can really add to immersion, and that just sounds pretty cool to me. That just sounds like a really neat use of the feature, so you immediately have that physical feedback, so like, oh no, my gun's jammed, better sort it out. You don't necessarily have to rely on the the visual feedback, should I say, on screen. an interesting use of the feature, I would say. And since I am a From Software fangirl, I'm obviously going to touch on the comments regarding Demon's Souls, although it did actually come from SIE Japan Studio rather than from Soft themselves, but you know, it's Souls related, okay? Deal with it. Anyway, their quote is quite lengthy, so I'm not going to read the whole thing, but I just want to focus on the second half of the paragraph, which reads, quote, "We can also turn the simple act of pulling a lever to open a gate into a sensory experience. This is something that Rumble could never do. It can never replicate the feeling of metal striking metal or fire crackling in your hand as you conjure magic. Haptics are integral to the experience, to immersing the player in the world and adding to the gameplay. The visual, oral, and tactile working together takes this generation of gaming into the future." Now, again, there's tons of quotes here. I've literally picked a couple out of a list of maybe 10 or so, not actually sure on the number. So do check out the blog if you're interested in reading more. Now, obviously, whether or not this sees much use, because we all know that the little swipe pad thing on the DualShock 4 doesn't really see a whole lot of use. Every now and again it gets used as an extra button, I suppose, but that's about it. So I hope that we don't see that sort of happen again to haptic feedback and the adaptive triggers, because I feel like they could be used in interesting ways and not just as a gimmick, but obviously only time will tell on that one. So we are going to finish up today's video with some very interesting comments from Eric Lampel, PlayStation's marketing boss. So these particular comments were actually made in an interview with GamesIndustry.biz, where he obviously discussed a lot of things. The interview itself is rather lengthy. I'm going to talk about a small part of it. So do check out the link in the description below this video for the full thing. But one thing I want to focus on is his comments that he called the upcoming games roster for the PS5 the, quote, best lineup we've ever seen in the history of PlayStation. And he went on to say, quote, "The content that will be in the launch window and beyond is incredibly exciting. I would say that this is the best lineup we've ever seen in the history of PlayStation between our worldwide studios groups and our partners from all the different publishers around the world. We revealed some of that content and naturally there will be more to come, but the way that the developers can engage with this platform and create these experiences with known IP as well as unknown IP is incredibly exciting." So obviously he's the marketing boss, it's his job to, well, do the marketing, but this is some very bold claims that he's making here. I'm sure we can all agree on that. The best lineup we've ever seen in the history of PlayStation. And in my head, I immediately think, okay, so you're competing against the lineup on the PS2. Now, the PS2 had a lot of really, really fantastic games. Obviously, it had a lot of faff as well, but the amount of games that were great on the PlayStation 2 is pretty significant. I have a huge PS2 collection, probably the biggest physical collection that I have. Second best is probably the Xbox 360 collection, with the PS4 maybe at the same or slightly behind. I'm not actually done a count, so I'm just kind of spitballing off the top of my head. So whether or not that it ends up being true is obviously very, very subjective. What is the best lineup is probably going to change based on who you ask. But he also touches on, near the end, the ad that recently came out that I discussed earlier on in this video. And he said, quotes, "The nice thing is that we're pulling it together. We will launch this year. That will happen. And from my end, we will absolutely make sure that we'll bring all of the magic and all of the excitement of launches that we have had in the past. We are still committed to doing that. It's more challenging than ever, but our gamers expect a lot from us." Now, obviously, we reported a little while ago that we will see an event at some point this month. Obviously, there's not much of this month left, just over a week and a half, I'd say you could argue, and we will allegedly see the teardown during that time, but also we have seen reports from Bloomberg that we will see the next announcement regarding the PS5 this month as well. So whether or not that's the teardown or not, we'll obviously have to wait and see, but it's going to be an interesting one for sure, because obviously Microsoft are going to be revealing the Xbox Series X around that same sort of time, or at least that's what we expect them to do. So it's going to be intriguing for sure, because I feel like it will give us a good picture of what the launch for both consoles is actually going to look like. Anyway, that is me done for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Oh, one quick thing actually. A few of you have been asking about Paul's Xbox Hot Chips video. He is working on it. It is a very in-depth project. He's just finished the script today. and I will be doing the editing for that probably tomorrow. I don't know if it'll be up tomorrow. It really depends on what happens with my real day 9 to 5 job, but I will do my best to get it up tomorrow, or if not, it will be up on Saturday. So we'll have to wait and see on that one, but it is coming, guys, so just hold on to your butts with that one. Anyway, thanks again for watching, guys. Bye-bye.